Welcome to this series I like to call Quick Reviews. Well, we'll take a quick look at some toilets that are more or less similar to other toilets. Today we're taking a look at the third generation Eljer Savoy toilet that was made around the same timeline as the third generation Eljer Patriot Toilet, from circa 1999 all the way up until at least circa 2005. Now, I'm mostly just going to skim over most of the facts in this particular video. If you want to see my full thoughts, I definitely recommend that you check out the third generation Eljer Patriot video to get a full idea of what I think of the toilet in general. So, overall design is pretty much more or less the same as the third generation Eljer Patriot. The trapway is pretty much the same, the design is the same, except the tank is now a lot more square and boxy. It's more of a rectangle more than anything. The tank parts are more or less the same as the Eljer Patriot. You got your handle, which is actually original. You got a fill valve, and then you got a standard flapper. Pretty standard stuff, but they can be interchanged if either one of them breaks, and they're pretty effective. Trapway opening, as you can tell, is more or less the same as the third generation Eljer Patriot, but this particular one is a little bit defective and a lot more restricted looking and smaller for whatever reason. Which is a common theme on Savoys, meaning that the quality control is really not as good as the Patriot. The flush, as you'll soon see, is pretty standard. The flush isn't too bad for a front flusher, honestly. Now, while pulling factor is more or less the same as the Patriot, one thing that this thing is a little bit different about is performance. It is not as good in comparison to the Eljer Patriot, which performs a lot better. The performance isn't completely terrible, but you can definitely tell it's a slight drop off, with the best performing version obviously again being the standard height elongated versions. Meanwhile, the comfort height and the round ball versions don't perform as well. Now let's take a look at Lawrence. Yeah, I really didn't notice much Lawrence on this particular one, which just explains how not so good the quality control is on the Savoy compared to the Patriot. But otherwise, I'd say it's more or less the same, if not a little bit worse. And that's the third generation Eljer Savoy toilet. Now let's put it into the grading scale and let's see how it compares to the Eljer Patriot of the same generation. Let's grade it. So for quick reviews like this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare the original score of the toilet I graded before, the Eljer Patriot, and see how it compares to the Eljer Savoy. So let's get started. For the overall design of the Eljer Patriot, I gave it a 5. So what am I going to give the Savoy? Well, I'll be completely honest with you, I really do not care for this tank design. In fact, I definitely think it makes the toilet look a little bit more cheaper, so I'm going to have to give it a 4 in comparison. The original parts are more or less very simplistic, but they get the job done, and they can be interchanged. And this applies for both the Patriot and the Savoy, so they both share a score of a 6. The quality control of the Eljer Patriot was mixed to say the least, and I gave it a 5. But for the Eljer Savoy, I'm going to have to give it a 4 because I've noticed that performance and just the overall quality is just a lot more worse in comparison to the Patriot, which, to be fair, is not really saying that much considering that it was pretty mixed to begin with. We're going to fast forward through these next couple of scores because they're pretty much the same. The trapway I don't like on either one, and both of them got a 3. The flush is not bad by any means, in fact it's one of the better front flushers out there in terms of flush, so both get a 6. And the pull and siphons both get a 5 on both versions, and it really depends on the longevity of the flush. The shorter the flush, the worse it is, the longer the flush, the better. So the performances is where the biggest differences come into play. Now with the Patriot, I combined all 3 versions. The comfort height ones and the round ball ones perform at most okay, while the standard height elongated version performs the best out of all of them, and I give it an overall score of 5. The Savoys, on the other hand, perform noticeably worse. The comfort height versions and the roundabout versions are known for not performing very good. In fact, it's kind of bad, which is kind of embarrassing considering that they're pretty much the same as these Patriots. Although I have heard rumors that the trap weights on these are unglazed, which definitely makes them perform a little bit worse in comparison to the Patriot. Now, similar to the Patriot, the standard height elongated version performs the best out of all three. So that's not really a surprise. Still though, overall, it performs worse, and I have to give it an overall score of 4. Now the bowl rinses are pretty mixed, and that's because of the different bowl designs. The comfort height one rinses the worst, while the standard height ones do okay at most, and so I made a combined score of 5 at the end of the day for the Patriot. The standard height and round ones still rinse okay, though I have noticed that the comfort height ones rinse a whole lot worse. So, in comparison, the bowl rinse is a little worse, so I have to give it an overall score of 4. For survivability, I gave the Patriot an overall 6, while the Savoy is definitely worse surviving and at most gets a 5. When it comes to overall value, I gave the Patriot a 5 overall due to some of the mixed nature that this toilet had. But what about the Savoy? Well, let's just say that while the Patriot was pretty mixed, you can at least say that it did have some interesting qualities. Meanwhile, the Savoy is basically a worse Patriot. The quality is worse, the performance is worse, and sometimes even the bowl rinse is a little worse. There's just a lot of downgraded qualities. It makes you wonder why you would not get a Patriot over a Savoy. Because the Savoy is basically a budget Patriot with a lot worse qualities. So therefore, I have to give the Savoy a 4. When I originally reviewed the 3rd Generation Eljer Patriot Toilet, I gave it a final score of a 52 out of 100. In comparison, the 3rd Generation Eljer Savoy gets a 46 out of 100 for its final score. Let's just say the Savoy is just worse in every way possible. A lot of the aspects are either the same or a lot worse. The Savoy is basically just a budget Patriot with a lot worse quality overall, and honestly, why would you get a Savoy over a Patriot?